What's going on, everyone? We are here live on this Wednesday evening talking some more March Madness. We are just 48 hours away from the tournament tipping off, probably less because they're going to be starting in the morning on Friday. I'm your host for tonight, Kenneth Cotterill, and I'm joined by Jet Folk from the Frostbite podcast. How you doing, Jet?
I'm very good. And folks, do not forget, we got 4 big games tomorrow as well. You better be tuning in for those to see who the final participants of the tournament are.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of great play-in games tomorrow. I know that Jet and the guys broke it down for you last night, so be sure to tune into some of those. You got UCLA taking on Michigan State. You've got Drake and Wichita State. And then a few 16 seeds taking on each other. Norfolk State and Appalachian State. And then the last one is blanking on me because I haven't given them a chance in their next game. But today's episode is sponsored by Statement Games. Be sure to check them out at statementgames.com. They have a phenomenal free-to-play platform that you guys should all go and check out. If you love prop bets, be sure to go and check it out and play those. You got a chance to win some gift cards and some other things on there for places like Under Armour and Nike and NFL Shop, places like that. So be sure to keep an eye out for those. But we're going to get in and get out here, 45-minute show. So we got to get right into things. Let's talk about the Baylor 22-2 taking on Hartford, the 16 seed. Jet, what do you think of this matchup?
Well, I mean, it's interesting in the sense that Baylor's coming in maybe not as hot as they once were throughout the season, but it's really no contest here. Hartford doesn't necessarily have a strength to their game, and Baylor has many strengths to their game, so I think they'll have no problem here.
Yeah, I mean, the point spread heading into this one is minus 26. I don't know if I would be taking the points. Like, it's always tough for me to take double digits, even if it is a 1 versus a 16, and you're getting up to 26 points. You got to be controlling that game from the tip, because if it's close at the start, then they could run into some trouble. Baylor is the best 3-point shooting field goal percentage in the country. They're 11th in steals. They distribute well. I mean, this is just a well-oiled machine, and as much as I like Hartford, they play a slow style. Overall, their 3-point shooting numbers are nowhere close, so they would have to have the shooting night of a lifetime, I think, in order to really make an impact in this game. And turnovers, even those, like they're behind Baylor in that category as well. So we're not going to spend too much time on the 1 and the 16 because we've only seen it once in the history of the tournament. So I'm not going to put too much weight into that one. Then we head over to the 8-9 game. We've got UNC. 2 Duke fans here talking about North Carolina. I wonder where this is going to go. The 18-10 Tar Heels taking on the Wisconsin Badgers, 17-12. Don't let the record fool you. They were in the very tough Big Ten this year. This is a good basketball team. So, Jet, what do you think of these two teams?
Well, I think you know what you're getting out of North Carolina. They're going to crash the boards hard. That's always how they're going to play. They distribute pretty well, but their issue is they are very bad at shooting the ball, so they really have to get buckets under the hoop, and if they can't do that, they get stymied. When it comes to Wisconsin, this team is one of the best in the country at not turning the ball over, which goes miles in winning basketball games. They're also great from the free throw line. So if there's any ticky-tack going on and it's in Wisconsin's favor, they're just going to pull further ahead. I like Wisconsin in this basketball game.
Yeah, I think you have two completely different styles. I mean, when we're looking at Wisconsin, you're looking at a team, as you said, they don't turn it over. They don't rebound the ball very well. They're 261st in the country, and they give up a big rebound advantage to UNC. It's 40-30, the numbers would say, and on the offensive boards, North Carolina's number 1 in the country. They get 14 a game there. So I think it's just going to be ultimately how well does Wisconsin shoot, because we know they're going to be giving up a lot of size in this game. Guys like Garrison Brooks on that team, they could have a really big day for them. And Wisconsin just got to find a way to slow them down. They do hit 3 more threes than them per game. They're going to have to hit more than that, I think, on the night in order to knock out North Carolina. North Carolina, obviously, they have the coaching advantage in this one. You've got Roy Williams, multiple-time national title winner. I just think overall this is a guy that he knows what it takes to get it done in the tournament. North Carolina is not one of those teams that typically goes home super early. That being said, he's had much more talented teams than this one here. So this is going to be a game to keep an eye on for sure. And I mean, it's always tough in the 8-9. I mean, it is pretty much a split every year. So
it's a little bit of wishful thinking on my part. I'm not going to lie. If you're a betting man, I'd say you should probably go North Carolina, but I can't bring myself to pick them. I'm sorry.
I said on shooters that it would be a cold day in hell before I would be taking North Carolina to win. But I do think that rebounding advantage is going to be massive. So yeah, I don't want to rule them out in this game as much as I love to clown on them. I think it's going to be a very close basketball game between two pretty storied programs overall from big conferences. When we head over to the 5-12, we've got Villanova. They're taking on Winthrop. Only one loss on the year for this 12 seed, and they're taking on a Villanova team who they were probably preseason top 5 heading in. They looked really good for a lot of the year. Unfortunately, injuries really derailed what I think is their national championship hopes. If they had Colin Gillespie, I'd feel way more confident about Villanova heading into the tournament. And to be honest, I think they got probably the best small conference tournament winner in Winthrop in this first round. Jet, what do you think of this matchup?
This is kind of like that last game where we've got a team that's really good on the boards against a team that's really not good on the boards. Winthrop being that team that's good on the boards. And as you said, you nailed it on the head. Gillespie being out is just, that's crushing for that Villanova team. One thing going for them, though, they're much like Wisconsin in that they do not turn the ball over ever. That will always play to your advantage. They're also great from the free throw line, and they make the 31st most amount of three-pointers in a game, 9.2 about per game. So that can go a long way to help their team. But Winthrop is a complete threat. There's no doubt about it. 8th in rebounding, 18th in offensive rebounding. And, they get their hands on the ball too, 54th in steals. So you got to keep your eye out for that. But Winthrop can also lose themselves the game because they have an issue with turnovers. They have to be careful with that.
Yeah, my concern with them, the turnovers, obviously, it's 9 for Villanova, 14 for them on the year. I do have some major concerns at the free throw line too. I don't like these small conference teams who don't shoot the free throws well, because down the stretch, if there's a coach that could come back in a game, it would be Jay Wright. Even though they are undermanned, he's one of the best coaches in college basketball today, probably top 3 right now, honestly. He's that good at coaching. And I mean, it's contrasting styles, as you said, as well as the pace. I mean, Nova loves to slow it down. I think it's why they don't turn over the ball very much. They shoot free throws well. They're honestly just a sound basketball team all around. It's a question of, can they overcome the injuries to their 2 major players? I think they can in this game. We'll talk about that more tomorrow night when we're actually picking the bracket. But overall, I like this Villanova team quite a bit. Even without Gillespie. Is there an upset here? I think it's definitely in the cards. We see the 12 over to 5 all the time. All time, the 5s obviously lead, but I wouldn't be too surprised when you've got middle tier big conference teams taking on a conference winner and the best conference winners. Then, I mean, it can always be a recipe for disaster there. Then we head over to the 4-13 in this side of the bracket. We've got number 4 Purdue. They're taking on number 13 North Texas. North Texas is a bit of a surprise to be here. A lot of people thought this was going to be Western Kentucky's conference to win, but ultimately they took them down in the final as the 6th seed. What do you think of Purdue and North Texas?
So when I look at Purdue, a lot of their statistics are pretty average. They're not great at anything, but they're adequate at everything. There are weaknesses, though. They don't get steals. Their three-point shooting is pretty porous, and their free throws are average at best. North Texas, they've got 2 strengths. One, they shoot the 3 ball well. They shoot from the floor well. But they cannot rebound to save their lives, and they are another team that has turnover issues. I think Purdue's probably the safe bet to get through this one. But if North Texas shot the lights out, which is usually how these lower-rated seeds win games, anything's possible.
Yeah, when I'm looking at North Texas as far as offense goes, they're 33rd in the country in field goal percentage. They shoot 47%, so they're a team that can definitely score at a high rate. They're also 30th in three-point field goal percentage. So this is a team where I think when you shoot it that well from three, is it possible for them to hit 10 threes in this game, make it really interesting against Purdue? I think it could happen for sure. I know they only average 7.5 on the year, but all it takes is that one night. This could potentially be that matchup for them. I also think Purdue really benefited from other teams in the Big Ten this year disappointing. When you've got Wisconsin, they're a lot lower than people thought they would be. Michigan State barely got into the tournament, and I don't think a lot of people saw that happening this year. So I think Purdue being the 5 seed in the Big Ten tournament, yes, they played Ohio State really tight, but we do have to remember that they lost that game still. So they're coming in after a loss. Maybe they're overlooking this North Texas team a little bit. It's not a team that you typically see in the tournament very often. So it's one to keep an eye on. I might consider it in quite a few brackets. And their defensive rating, they're 24th in the country in defensive rating. So this is a team that can lock you down. So if they shoot the lights out and play solid defense, it's definitely one to keep an eye on as far as a 13 over a 4 is concerned. Then we head over to the bottom half of this region. We've got Texas Tech and Utah State. This is a very difficult 6 and a very difficult 11 seed meeting each other in this matchup. I think that personally they're the best at those rankings as far as the tournament goes. When I look at Texas Tech, Mac McClung had a great year. They were in the very tough Big 12 conference. They didn't really lose to a bad team all year. That's the thing about this Texas Tech team. It's they beat who they should have. They lost to who they should have. So what are your thoughts on this matchup overall?
Texas Tech is going to be an intriguing team because they're another one that doesn't turn the ball over that much, and they crash the boards hard in the offensive zone. There's a bit of a concern that if they get behind, they might not be able to hit the 3 ball to catch up. So that's one thing to look for. Another thing is they don't spread the floor well in the half court sets. They really don't get the ball moving. It gets real stagnant. It almost feels like they have to run and gun at times in order to even get any sort of offense rolling. For Utah State, they're a very good rebounding team, both sides of the ball. So if that is something that can counteract Texas's offensive rebounding ability, they might be in trouble. Utah's a great ball moving team, 19th in the country at that for assists. So yeah, I mean, neither team is really going to light it up from outside the arc, but I think Utah State could really take advantage of the boards if they're able to box out on the defensive end.
Yeah, when we look at the point spread here, they have it currently, it opened at 4.5 for Texas Tech. It's now -4, but the team total is only 131. So I don't think they really see a high scoring game here. I think they're thinking it's going to be low 60s, probably for both teams. I think we all know this is going to be a close game. As I said, Utah State, they're a very good basketball team. They lost in their conference final to San Diego State. And a pretty good year all around for that conference, all things considered. So I'm glad to see Utah State is there. Whether or not they can knock off Texas Tech, who's really got a ton of talent and I think a lot of depth, that remains to be seen. And that's going to be one that I'm definitely tuning into. I've taken Texas Tech far in a couple of other brackets that I've done, but they could very easily be out because of how good this Utah State team is. Then we head over to number 3, Arkansas. They're 22-6. They're taking on the 14 seed Colgate, who's 14-1 on the year. Granted, they didn't start playing basketball until the beginning of January, so they've had a lot shorter season than a lot of other teams. It's not COVID riddled with this team. they started late. Jet, what are your thoughts on this matchup?
I'll start with Colgate's side here. Very important stats to think about. 3rd in the country at 3-point shooting, 6th in the country at turnovers per game. So that's a good thing. I'm not saying they turn the ball over a lot. I'm saying that's a good thing. Assists per game, they are 7th. Field goal percentage, they are 8th. Rebounds per game, they are 10th. These are all important stats. Now, granted, they're not against the best teams, but they're impressive nonetheless. They don't necessarily get after the boards after they shoot the ball, but they tend to not need to because it goes in. We got the number 43 offense on Colgate, and we got the number 35 offense on Arkansas. Should be a lot of points here, depending on which version of the defense shows up for Arkansas. Arkansas rebounds well, both on the defensive and offensive glass. They do tend to get a good amount of steals, which helps them get into transition offense. But because they play such a fast style, sometimes they get into issues with turnovers. So I will not be shocked if Colgate wins this game. I'm not going to tell people to do it, but I won't be shocked, man.
This would be in probably my top 5. Like, if you're looking at a 12 or worse upset to look at, I would have this one in there. I like Arkansas overall. They were smoking hot for a long time there. They won a ton of games in a row, a ton of conference games in a row, and then they ultimately lost in their conference tournament in the semifinals. But this is still a very good Arkansas team. I don't want to take credit away from them. Just did they perhaps draw a really bad matchup of a team? I mean, they make 9 threes per game and they're third in percentage. So is this one of those situations where they hit 10, 11, 12 threes, they're lighting it up and Arkansas ultimately can't keep up with them? Or it could be the flip side. They can only hit 6 or 7. They get the off shooting night. Arkansas runs them out of the building. And that's what's concerning about brackets is if you're going to commit to that 14, you better get it right, because if not, you're going to lose to 90% of brackets on that game. Possibly the next one is there, and that's when it can start to spiral, and that's how you lose your pool. But this is also a pool winner if you take it and it hits. So I don't want to deter people from taking an upset like that, because they happen all the time. They haven't happened in the last couple of years as far as the 14s and 15s winning. But we saw it just a number of years ago where it seemed to be happening every single year. So mostly to Duke. But then we head over and we're talking about the 7-10 matchup. We've got Florida 14-9. They lost to Tennessee in the SEC tournament pretty early on. And then you've got Virginia Tech. They also lost early on in the ACC. But they did have that big statement win. I think it was their 3rd game of the year. They beat a healthy Villanova, not the Villanova team that we see now. Overall, I think this is a matchup where if Trey Mann really lights it up, we could see Florida advance, or we could see Virginia Tech figure out a way to slow him down and then they advance because they're such a balanced team. What do you think of these two teams heading in?
Well, I just kind of think this is the battle of the average teams. That's what it feels like to me. The strengths for Florida are free throw shooting, and they shoot decent from the field. There's really only one strength for Virginia Tech, and it's that they don't turn over the ball a whole ton. But both of these teams have multiple weaknesses. For Florida, it's turnovers, it's spacing the floor, it's getting rebounds. Like there's a lot of stuff that they need work on. For Virginia Tech, they can't get a steal ever. They suck from the free throw line. They don't get rebounds. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's just two teams plagued by so many issues and so little to really break home about. But yeah, at least Florida's got a guy that I know the name of and I'm interested to watch, in Trey Mann. So,
I mean, I think one major key that we're looking for is who can be that player on a team that has the Carson Edwards run, right? Like we saw it a number of years ago, and ultimately it shot up his draft stock, and now he seems to be doing fairly well in the league. But who's that guy on a team that could maybe take them on a bit of a run, maybe to the Sweet 16, maybe the Elite 8 if they have some luck go their way? Florida is one of those teams for me because of Trey Mann. But I mean, Virginia Tech I haven't liked all year, so I feel like I've got quite a bit of bias because while I point out that Villanova win early in the year, then they shot up the rankings, and then it seemed like they would just do enough to stay in, or they would like fall out 1 week, but then they were right back because they picked up a couple wins. But that doesn't mean that I'm overly sold on Virginia Tech. I know that they lost in the ACC tournament pretty early, and I think it's because they don't do a lot of things well. When you have so many question marks heading into a tournament, I mean, if you go up against a team that rebounds really well, they could easily send them home pretty quickly. If you go up against the team that takes care of the ball, they go home. Like it's a really not a team that I'm looking at taking going very far at all. So I I really like Florida in this game, but as I said, I'm biased because of my Virginia Tech hate this year. So that's going to be a very interesting 7-10. They're usually pretty split on these as well. I know that the 7 obviously will have the all-time edge, but it does seem like they go 2-2 a lot of years when it comes to the 7-10s. And so that'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on. One that I know a lot of people are keeping an eye on is number 2 Ohio State, which you don't usually see a lot of 2 seeds with 9 losses, but when you make it all the way to the Big Ten final, you beat some good teams along the way. It's going to happen. They take on number 15 Oral Roberts, who, they got the 16-10 record, so it doesn't look that impressive. But when you dive into the numbers and you see the number 1 3-point field goal making team and the best free throw shooting team as a 15 seed, there's a little bit of cause for concern there. What do you think of these two?
Well, it leaves you no room to have any mistakes defensively. You have to be right in everybody's face because you know that if you're not there, they're going to hit the shots. That's what they're made to do. Luckily for Ohio State, Oral Roberts is not a good defensive team, so they can maybe claw their way back into into the game offensively. But Oral Roberts is scary because if they are hitting, what do you do? If you can't stop the shot, it is what it is. You might just lose because they score more.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't seen a 15 over a 2 since 2016. Back then, it was Middle Tennessee knocking off Michigan State. A lot of people that year thought Michigan State should have been a 1 seed. Well, then they lost to a 15, so that went out the window pretty quickly. But, as we know with March Madness, you never know when it's going to happen. This is just one we like to highlight, I think, because the numbers say that they could definitely keep it close. So once again, it's very tough to pick a 15 because if you get it wrong and then you get Ohio State and then they go to the Sweet 16, Elite 8, it hurts your bracket a lot because a lot of people will have them there. But that's another one of those bracket winners. I mean, if you can figure a way to find that 15, you look like an absolute genius that you can brag to your friends about for like 12 hours because then like no one really cares after that. But is there an upset there? I think it's up in the air. The numbers say take the 2, but I'll give you the last thought on this one.
There's a chance. I don't think it's a very good chance though, because I think Ohio State's the kind of team that's built to be able to deal with a team that can score because they themselves can score. You know what I mean? So if their defense really shows up and does even an 80% job, they should be able to handle Oral Roberts at their 100%. But, it's that crazy game, 2-15. Sometimes it happens and you just go, wow, I knew I shoulda.
I mean, I look at the point spread. They've got it at -17 at start. It's now down to -16. But the team total, they've got all the way up at 157.5. You don't really see that a lot in college basketball. I think that's people saying that neither team's good defensively. Ohio State might score 100 and Oral Roberts still scores 80, and that's the reason why they end up there. I like the spread at +16 personally, but we'll see a little bit closer to maybe that line goes back up to -17. But before we head in to talk about the last region, we will be live tomorrow night on Thursday at 7:30 Eastern time. That's 5:30 Jet and my time for the official BCMG Bracket Challenge. We're going to be joined by multiple BCMG guys. We've got 5 of us, as far as I know, for tomorrow night we don't want to have the deadlock. You don't want to have that 2-2 split ever. So we're not going to run into that issue tomorrow night having 5. And be sure to check out www.bluecollarmg.com for all 68 teams. They were broken down. They're all up on the website. You're definitely going to want to go and check those out. Last article was posted this afternoon. So go and check those out before you start filling in these brackets. Some people have already filled them in. I like to wait sometimes until those 11 games happen, especially this year because there's a couple 11s I like way more than the others. But let's talk about the final region, starting with Illinois, the 23-6 Big Ten champions. They got their big duo of Ayo and Kofi. They're taking on the 12-7 Drexler team. This one to me says blowout all over it, but what are your thoughts on it?
Well, we're talking about a Drexel that can't rebound against a team that has Kofi Coburn, so it's going to be a problem. Illinois is going to probably kill them by 1 billion, maybe 1,000,000,001. I'm not quite sure yet, but yeah, I give no chance to the Drexel Dragons.
I mean, that's the thing. When I looked at the -23, I was like, is this really less of a matchup for them than when you look at that Baylor Hartford game? Because I mean, for me, if you don't rebound well, you're going to get absolutely torched by Illinois. And I think that's going to be the case. I see them winning by 30, 40, maybe not 50, but like 45. Like, I could definitely see that happening in this game. And I mean, great year for Drexel. I mean, overall, the program hasn't had a lot of moments over the last number of years. So good on them for getting into the tournament. But it's just, this is where it ends, I think, and I think everyone thinks that heading in. And if you don't, you get it right, well, then once again, you can brag for 12 hours about that one upset that you took. Then we head over. We got Loyola Chicago. We got the 8 seed, the scary 8 seed, 24-4. They won their conference championship over Drake. And then Georgia Tech, the surprise ACC champions this year. They're 17-8 on the year. What do you think of these two teams?
See, I really want to go in on Loyola Chicago, especially because Ken Palm has them as the #1 defense. And I think that's just such an effort thing. I got a lot of respect for their game. Plus, they shoot the lights out, 4th in the country field goal percentage. That's awesome. There's a little bit of a concern in their rebounding. But I mean, that's to be expected for a team that really likes to take jump shots instead of attacking the basket. Georgia Tech, the reason I'm worried about this game is just that they are on a bit of a heater, a little mini heater. And they get steals. They get a lot of steals. And if you're getting steals and you're converting those for points, like, you can quickly flip the script of games. If you're behind or if you're ahead, you can really extend. And that's a little bit troublesome for me. But you know what? Georgia Tech also sucks at rebounding. So it's going to be like a let it fly, let's see what happens kind of game. It's going to be a lot of fun. I lean Loyola Chicago.
I lean Loyola as well, because it's hard to believe that there's a team that's rebounds worse than them, and they're lucky enough to get them in the first round of the tournament. I mean, either way, they both rebound so poorly, it makes me concerned that whoever wins and gets Illinois, I mean, they could be in tough once again with those bigs there. We'll be getting into that more tomorrow night, but I also lean Loyola Chicago. Sister Jean is going to be there. We can't rule that out. Like, there might be a higher power involved in this game. We saw it on their Final Four runs, so definitely one to keep an eye on. Then we've got #5 Tennessee, 18-8. They had their SEC tournament derailed by a pretty major injury, an injury that we're still unsure of when it comes to John Fulkerson. I know he had surgery a number of days ago, so he's still up in the air for this game. Then you got Oregon State. They're like Georgia Tech, where not a lot of people had them winning the Pac-12 conference, but in successive days, they knocked off UCLA, Oregon, and Colorado to win their conference tournament. They wouldn't have got into the tournament had they not done that. So what are your thoughts on this game? My initial thoughts are, I think they could still win without Fulkerson, but after that, then it gets really sketchy.
Yeah, I mean, there's a strength on both teams for the free throw line, so I'm going to let those cancel each other out. Then you're just looking at Oregon State, who's really good at not turning the ball over, to Tennessee's ability to get assists on the team. I think that's kind of the focus on both of those offenses, is ball security for Oregon State and getting everybody involved on Tennessee. What really puts me over the top for Tennessee here is the defensive differential here. There's a significant difference. Tennessee's top 5 in America in defense, and Oregon State is barely in the top 120. So that's a huge advantage for Tennessee.
No, I agree for sure. I mean, when you look at the numbers, they're so similar across the board, and then you get to that defense, and it's just, I mean, maybe it is just Oregon State has a really good shooting night, and then suddenly they're sending Tennessee home. But I would 100% be taking Tennessee if Fulkerson's in. I don't think he will be, so I think it's going to be a close game. Point spread on that game, For whatever reason, Tennessee's -8. I don't love that spread. I think it's pretty excessive given the injury concerns there. And 8 is way bigger in college basketball than it is in the NBA, because you got teams scoring 100 plus. Some of these teams may not cross 65 points, 60 points. So I have major concerns around the spread as far as that game goes. Then we got Oklahoma State 20-8. Cade Cunningham led Oklahoma State. They went all the way to the Big 12 final before losing to Texas. They beat Baylor this year. I mean, they've beaten everybody this year. Like, they've got so many quad one wins. This is a really quality basketball team. It's not just Cade. He's just the name you throw out there, but Boone has been huge for him as his kind of second in command of this team. They do have a tough Liberty team. It is one that I have a little bit of concerns about, but overall, what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I mean, Liberty does a good job in the offensive side of things. They obviously shoot well. That's how they got to where they are. But they don't produce steals. They don't get rebounds. That's an issue against an Oklahoma State team that does get rebounds very well. And they have a superstar. They really do. Cade Cunningham is going to be the first pick in the draft. And there's a reason that people are taking them to go very deep in these brackets. He's number one. He's got to be. So, yeah, I mean, Liberty could very well do an Oral Roberts and shoot the lights out, but I still like Oklahoma State, even if they do.
I just think when you have a guy like Cade down the stretch who could really take over a game, I think if it got close, I would just have to lean Oklahoma State, because I think Cade could go on an 8-0 run himself and just get them by the upset. So that's why I would lean Oklahoma State there for sure. Overall, I like Oklahoma State's team a lot. I think they beat whoever gets out of the other game. Spoiler alert. But moving on to the 6, we got San Diego State 23-4. They beat Utah State in their conference championship final. They're taking on a Syracuse team who, they've been a higher seed quite a few times over the last number of years, but we've also seen them go deep in the tournament as that high seed. You got Jim Boeheim and Buddy Boeheim as well on that team. So this is going to be a really fun matchup for me. What are your thoughts on these?
Well, first and foremost, I will say I've been banging the drum on Buddy Boeheim all year. I really like his game. I think that he could produce at the next level potentially as a spot-up shooter for somebody. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to Syracuse, they're actually a kind of an unconventional Syracuse team, because this year they're getting carried by the offense as opposed to their standard 2-3 defense that tends to get them through games. But they're shooting good from the free throw line. They're not shooting the best from 3. They're not really shooting the best from the field. They don't really get boards, but they get steals, they get turnovers. They got a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's actually a very strange Syracuse. I'm not used to this version of them. And in regards to San Diego State, they are pure possession basketball. They are very focused on not turning the ball over. They're very focused on making you make a mistake and give them the ball back. I have a tough time just flat out picking this game. I think I'd have to think a lot longer and a lot harder on it. I lean San Diego State, but I'm still yet to pick my bracket, so we'll see.
Yeah, I think this is a really intriguing 11-6, especially when you have such a quality coach in Boeheim. You don't know what he could potentially throw at them. And Buddy Boeheim, we saw in the ACC tournament, he can go off for 30 points. He could be like that Trey Mann, honestly, where he goes on a tear, scores 30 a game over a couple games, and then suddenly they find themselves in the Sweet 16. So this is a tough game for me to pick too. We also know that 11/6 is not that uncommon. So when we look at the 3 and 14 on this side, we got West Virginia 18-9. They're kind of limping into the tournament a bit, but they are led by Bob Huggins, one of my favorite coaches in college basketball. They're taking on a Morehead State team who upset Belmont in the conference final. They certainly weren't getting in unless they won that conference final. So this may be an example of not just happy to be here, but now you're ready to shock the world once again. So what are your thoughts on this 3 versus 14?
I think Morehead State already won their national title, defeating Belmont. I think that's going to be the plaque that goes on the wall for them, because West Virginia is just going to be too much to handle on the boards. in regards to pretty much everything defensively. They're just better than Morehead State. Now, credit where credit's due. Morehead State has an okay defense, not bad. But I just feel like they're a little bit outgunned here. West Virginia's probably going to bring the heat.
Yeah, I mean, overall, when I'm picking upsets, I'm looking at teams that could hit threes, that could make free throws, that could out-rebound a team, and it's just not there in the numbers. They will shoot it more efficiently than West Virginia because West Virginia's got one of the lowest field goal percentages in the country, but I just don't think that they have enough offense to really offset what West Virginia is going to bring to the table. And Huggins is such an experienced coach that I tend to lean the better coach in a game like this. So give me West Virginia there. Then we head over to Clemson and Rutgers. Shout out to Connor Pedersen, student manager at Clemson. He's been breaking down that game film on this Rutgers team, and I've been seeing a lot of people picking the 10 over the 7. And I mean, Clemson's just one of those teams where they've beaten a lot of good teams, but then they've also lost to Virginia by 35. And then lost to Duke by double digits, who's not a Duke team that you should be losing to by double digits this year. And then you got Rutgers, who is in that tough Big Ten. They played a lot of quality games, have some quality wins, but they also have some bad losses. So this is just a really tricky 7-10 game for me. What do you think of this one?
I think this one might come down to refereeing, to be honest with you, because if it gets to the line, Clemson has the advantage by a fair margin. But my problem with Clemson is there's really nothing that jumps out at me as oh, that's their thing. I don't get that vibe from them whatsoever. I don't really get that from Rutgers either. These both feel like teams that whoever gets through, no matter who I pick, I'm going to probably have them losing the next game anyways. But God, I don't know. I think I'm going to go Rutgers. Just because I think they could produce a little bit more offense, but barely.
Yeah, I would lean Rutgers because they played the tougher conference schedule. So they've played a lot more good teams, whereas Clemson, they probably only had a handful this year because the ACC was so weak. So Rutgers, I would lean the edge there, but I'll roll with Clemson just to... Because I think Connor, I don't want to lose my number one fan on my own show, so I got to roll with Clemson on that one.
No worries.
And then the last game we're talking about tonight, we got those Houston Cougars, 24-3. Great season for them. I had them in my preseason top 10. I think that they're a team that is just people have slept on them all year because they haven't had the quality wins that everyone loves to talk about, but they've only lost 3 games all year. They beat Texas Tech earlier in the year. That's kind of their statement win. They're taking on a Cleveland State team where, I'll be honest, I didn't know Cleveland State was a school. So what are your thoughts on this matchup?
Well, there's not a whole lot of teams in my notes where in the strengths category, I've written none, but Cleveland State is one of them. I don't see anything on their team that's good. I do see that they shoot from the free throw line very poorly, that they don't make threes very often, that when they try to make threes, they miss them. They don't rebound well, and they have issues with turnovers. So that sounds like a 16 seed, if not a team that shouldn't be in the tournament. Houston's got the number 8 offense and the number 16 defense. That sounds like a team that could go into a game against an Illinois or Gonzaga right now and give them a run. So got to go Houston.
Yeah, I mean, offensive rating 5th, defensive rating 4th. Their opponent, offensive rating 154th, defensive rating 214th. I don't think it's going to be a close game. They'll say, well, Houston hasn't played anybody. Well, this is a nobody, in my opinion, and they've beaten them all year. So I see no reason why that would change now. But that pretty much caps things off as far as the games for this side of the bracket. As I said, we're going to be live tomorrow night doing the official Blue Collar Media Group bracket. But Jet, before I let you go, where can the folks find you at home?
You can find me at Frostbite Pod on Twitter. You can also look us up on Facebook, Frostbite Sports Podcast. You'll find us in the search bar. Really looking forward to tomorrow. Really looking forward to Friday. Can't wait. I really want to see how the boys pick this bracket because I only get 1/5 of the votes, so it could be interesting.
Oh, definitely. I think when you have you got Harrison Brooks coming on tomorrow night and his vibes, I mean, he might not be vibing, and then suddenly we're maybe sending somebody home that you and I really like. But you can follow me on all social platforms at shooters_pod. As I said, we'll be live tomorrow night, 7:30 Eastern time, 6:30 Central, breaking down the bracket once again, but our official Blue Collar Media Group bracket. And be sure to go and sign up for our Blue Collar Media Group Bracket Challenge. We're at over 150 entrants, aiming for 250. So be sure to sign up for that. It's free money, folks. First place, $200. Second place, $75. And third place, $25. I mean, you pick the champion and you're probably close to the money. So maybe not as worried about those 14 over 3s or 15 over 2s that we were talking about. But thanks, everyone, for joining us tonight. And we'll see you tomorrow night.